When the internet began, bulletin board services, or BBS, became the first online communities of the so-called information superhighway. Using their phone lines, people logged in from all over America to talk about sports, games, movies, and on one BBS in particular, share their ghost stories. Over time, those communities all went dark, except for one lone server that continues to operate somewhere in an unknown part of Pennsylvania's Rust Belt. A relic of the 1990s, veiled in mystery, it is a digital archive of humanity's strangest encounters with the unknown, as told by the people who experienced them. My name is Brandon Schexnayder, and you are listening to Fear Daily.
Subject: Midnight in the Rectory. User: FRFR3D316. Posted December 23, 1998.
I woke up and couldn't move. Not a twitch, not a breath, not even the little things like licking my lips or turning my head. Just my eyes darting back and forth in the dark, the only parts of me still tethered to this world. It was cold in the room, colder than it should have been for late fall in New Mexico, and there was weight on my chest. Not like someone was sitting on me, but like I'd been pressed beneath something heavy and invisible. That's when I saw it. There was something standing in the far corner of the bedroom, not moving, not breathing, just there. It wasn't shaped wrong, exactly. It looked like a man, tall and narrow, shoulders sloped like a coat hanger under a heavy robe, but it was darker than the room around it. Not shadowed by the absence of light, but something that seemed to absorb light, like it had been cut out of the air entirely. I tried to speak, tried to pray. I began the Our Father in my head, slowly, with effort, and made it as far as deliver us from evil before something inside me jammed like a rusty lock. Words wouldn't finish. My thoughts bent in on themselves and stalled. The figure didn't move, didn't advance, didn't vanish. It just stood there, watching. Then, as suddenly as it had come, it was gone. I could move again. My breath came all at once, like surfacing from underwater. I turned on the lamp. The room looked the same as always. Beige walls, cracked ceiling, a nightstand with a rosary beside a well-worn book of Psalms. Everything in place, except for that small crucifix above the bedroom door. It had fallen. The nail was still in the wall. I didn't tell anyone. I live alone, retired after over 50 years of ministry in a quiet little parish that most people drive past without noticing. The rectory is modest, single-story, thick adobe walls, hardwood floors that creak no matter where you step. Through the back window, I can see the chapel, just a short walk away across a stone path. There's no television in the house, no radio, just books, prayer, and the kind of silence you only get out here in the desert. I used to love that silence. The second time it happened, I was better prepared. I'd stayed up reading until nearly midnight, telling myself the first time was just a dream, a trick of the brain. I made a cup of tea and left a candle lit in the window. But it didn't matter. That night, the figure was closer. Not in the corner this time, at the foot of the bed. I couldn't see its face, but somehow I knew it was looking at me. The same paralysis, the same choking pressure. Again, I tried to pray, but the words felt like they belonged to someone else, like they were being stripped out of my mind before I could hold on to them. When the paralysis broke, I sat up so fast, I nearly passed out. My rosary was no longer on the nightstand. I found it on the floor beside the bed, coiled like it had been placed there gently. The third night, I didn't sleep. I wrapped myself in my old robe and walked to the chapel. I lit a candle, opened the Psalms, and sat alone under the crucifix in the second pew. I didn't fall asleep. I didn't even really pray. I just stayed there with the smell of candle wax and old wood and waited for morning. Nothing happened. I did the same the next night and the next. The presence never came when I was in the chapel. Something about that space, about being near the tabernacle, made me feel insulated, protected, as if the boundary between this world and whatever lay behind that thing was held at bay by the holy presence. I still don't know what it was. A demon? A spirit? A memory made manifest? I've read the clinical explanations, sleep paralysis, hypnagogic hallucinations, but none of that accounts for the way the room felt. None of it explains why the thing never followed me into the chapel. Months passed, and I began to believe it was over. I went back to sleeping in my bed, and there were no more figures, no more pressure. I slept deeply. I slept peacefully. Till last winter. I woke again in the dark, bound by the same invisible weight. I knew immediately it had returned, but this time I couldn't see it, and that was so much worse. I felt it. The presence was closer than ever. No longer standing by the door, the foot of the bed. It was beside me. Couldn't turn to look, but I could feel the shift in the air, the way the cold spread out across my chest, how the edges of the room seemed to warp in the corner of my vision, and then something touched my shoulder. Not a strike, not a grip, just a hand. Light, cold, still. I didn't panic. I didn't scream. Couldn't anyway, but even if I could, I wouldn't have. The fear was gone. What I felt then wasn't terror, but awe. A sense that something beyond my understanding had been permitted to touch my life. A veil being drawn back for just a moment, allowing me to glimpse the machinery behind the world. I could move again. I fell to my knees beside the bed. I didn't speak, didn't light the lamp. I simply knelt there in the dark and thanked God. Not because I wanted it to happen, but because I had been allowed to feel it and live through it. I believe God let this happen. Not as punishment, not as a test, but as a reminder. There is more to life than what we see, more than we can measure or name. We go about our days thinking the world is solid, and safe, and explainable, but it isn't. Not really. There are shadows with shape. There are silences that listen back. And yet, not once did that thing cross the threshold into the chapel. Not once did it breach the space where the host is kept. Whatever it was, however dark or strange, it knew where the boundaries were, and it respected them. I haven't spoken about this until now. Maybe I never will. I don't write this to frighten anyone or to convince. I just want it recorded. I want someone else to know. There is a presence that guards us, even when we forget.
Subject, up in smoke. User, R3GR3TMAN02. Posted, April 17th, 1997.
I was desperate and didn't know what to do. No one ever taught me how to be an adult. I didn't go to some fancy business school. Mentors were non-existent. I just kept my head down, kept swinging, and hoped for the best. The shop was supposed to be my second chance. After I got laid off from the plan, I cashed out what little retirement I had and took out a loan I had no business signing for. A buddy of mine was selling his landscaping supply business, said it had potential. I thought if I worked harder than everyone else, that'd be enough. But the truth is, work ethic doesn't keep the lights on when the trucks need new tires and the inventory ain't moving. It doesn't fix the busted register or cover rent when a storm takes half the roof off the side building. And it sure as fuck doesn't mean a damn thing when some big box place opens up down the highway slinging soil and stone for less than I can even buy it. I started juggling bills just to keep us afloat. Skipped my own paychecks even, put groceries on cards I'd sworn I wouldn't use. Moved into the little trailer out back behind the shop and told myself it was just temporary. I didn't want to let anyone go. I kept telling myself spring would save us, that a few more contracts would come through, that we were just one good season away. But winter dragged on, and the ledger kept bleeding. Mia, she never asked questions. Not when pay came a day late, not when the schedule got cut. She'd just nod and say, I get it. Go back to sweeping the gravel or stacking bags. Always steady, always quiet. I remember one night, I stayed late trying to balance the books by hand, and I heard her in the back laughing. First time I'd ever heard her laugh. She was on the phone with her daughter, helping her spell something. It was that kind of laugh that hit you in the chest. Bright and hopeful. She told me later she had 2 kids and no help. Worked 2 jobs even. Came to us during the day, cleaned medical offices at night. She said the hours didn't bother her though. Said it made her feel like she was building something. Well, it was a Tuesday night when I made the decision. I just renewed the coverage on the place. The building was full of flammable stock. Stacks of peat, pallets of straw, plastic jugs of fuel for the mowers. The camera out back hadn't worked in months, and I knew nobody'd be watching the tapes anyway. I told myself it would be quick. It was cleaner than running things into the ground and laying everyone off one by one. So I pulled the main breaker, soaked a rag with gas, and dropped it in an oil paint can behind the office wall. I stood in the woods across the lot and watched it catch. It went up faster than I thought it would. The windows blew before the fire trucks even got there, and as the sirens closed in and the heat from the flames warmed my skin, I felt a strange kind of peace, relief. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about late bills or bounced checks. But then I heard her screams. They weren't muffled by the fire or the distance. They cut straight through me, sharp and real and human. The firemen shouted over each other, stomping through the gravel with hoses and axes. One of them pressed his gloved hand to his radio and yelled, "We've got someone in the back behind the office. Woman, I repeat, someone's back there." they didn't reach her in time. It took them hours to dig through the mess after the flames were out. Charred beams, twisted metal shelves, everything soaked in black. When they finally found her, she was pinned under the table in the back room. Looked like she'd tried to crawl low, tried to find air, but the floor gave under her and she was trapped. They said it was the smoke that ultimately got her, that it was quick, but the look on the chief's face said otherwise. It said it wasn't easy. I didn't know she'd stayed late. I had sent everyone home early the day before, told them to take the week off while I figured some things out. I thought I was being generous, but Mia always stayed late, always cleaned up what others left behind. She was only 23, a young mom just trying to make it through. I'd see her nodding off during lunch, coffee gone cold beside her. She never asked for help, never wanted sympathy. 2 little ones, a daughter just starting school and a baby still in diapers. She didn't talk about them much, but I remember once she told me she could make a week's worth of meals for $15 and a pack of coupons. Told me that with pride in her voice. And I took her from them. When the fire inspectors said it looked like a faulty outlet, I didn't cry, didn't fake anything. I just sat there and listened, but I wasn't thinking about the payout. Not anymore. I wasn't thinking about the debt finally disappearing. I was thinking about those kids, what they'd wake up to, what it would mean to grow up without their mother, how I thought I'd ruin her life by letting her go, and how merciful that would have been compared to this. Nobody came after me. No questions, no charges. I got a check in the mail 2 weeks later, enough to start over, and that should have been the end of it, but it wasn't. Now, wherever I go, she's there. Not loud, not angry, just present. I'll be trimming hedges on a hot afternoon, sweat running down my neck, and I'll feel that little chill crawl up my spine. I'll glance up, and there she'll be, just past the fence line. Her face the same as the night they pulled her out of the rubble, blackened, barely a shape, melted hair fused to her cheek, but her eyes, those brown eyes, are still hers, still clear, still asking me why. She never moves, never speaks. She just waits. She's in the hallway outside my bedroom sometimes, just beyond the edge of the light. Other nights, she's closer, in the corner of the room while I try to sleep. She does not leave. I've seen her in the mirror once or twice, standing behind me when I wash my face, always just enough to see. She was in the side mirror of the truck when I passed the old lot a few months back, standing there on the sidewalk, same clothes, same silence. But the strangest part, the strangest thing of all, I don't want her to go. It's not fear anymore, it's weight, memory, a presence I carry like a scar. I've come to expect her. I don't drink to forget, I don't talk about it, I just live with it. She's my reminder that shortcuts cut deeper than you think, that when you do something like this, you don't just lose your soul, you steal someone else's. So, I wake up early now. I take smaller jobs. I make sure my guys are paid right, that no one works alone, that I always do a final check before closing up shop. I don't pray. Not anymore. There's really no fixing it, but when I see her, I nod, and in my own quiet way, I say I'm sorry. Every single day for the rest of my life.
Fear Daily is an independent podcast hosted by Brandon Schexnayder and written by Brennan Storr, with Joanna Smith serving as the consulting editor, audio production by Rachel Boyd, and sound design by Southern Gothic Media. This podcast is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places, and incidents are either products of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or to real events or locations, is entirely coincidental. Ad-free versions of Fear Daily are available now on your favorite podcast apps. For more information, visit feardaily.com. But move fast, before the server goes offline.